for a surety that there are some cases where the change is so great that we may say that the member of humanity is remade anew into an entirely new person. So what does that mean, into an entirely new person? We say namastu. When you were taking your baptism, you had your hands across the chest. This was a symbol, or is a symbol, of one dying unto self. This is us saying that we are going to be dead to these warped societal ideas. We're going to be dead to the misinformation and the confusion and the miseducation and the whitewashing and all of the things that aims to separate us from who we truly are. We're going to become dead to that. So you've gone through a transition. You've gone through a death of sorts. So I wanted you to hear yourself, because I didn't say it. You all are saying how you've changed. The original books of the Bible talks about this change. It talks about this idea or this reality of being made anew. Elder Johnny, I see your hand up. I don't know if that was.
Oh, that's from earlier. Sure, you can
okay,
take it back.
Just making sure. Just making sure. And so we go now, continuing from last week, into the Bereshit, the African book of Genesis. Genesis from an African perspective. Being Rab Khalik wal Kareem. We're going to start at verse 60, and we want to go down to around verse 67. And it says, and so it was that the who?
Naturu Elohim.
Naturu Elohim, these African guardian angelic hosts of that generation. So each generation, there's a group that's assigned to us. They're children. They were assigned after the second meteorite shower did take the male and elder of the two groups of children, read out of the four rulers and priests, headed by one called Zakar, which means he with the best of memory, and placed them in the now prepared universe city and garden of Akhet Aten, the Gan Eden, in order that there would be replenished, protected, and separated from the humanoid beasts and fallen angels who resided across the burning sands of the deserts of the south, the Aswad Arabia, the Black Arabia camp. All of this was important for at that time in Tamaray, ancient Africa, which was also called what? This word here. Ganawa. Ganawa. Everybody say Ganawa.
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 Ganawa. There were other cities, namely Mu, Salam, Dilmun, Lumeria, Kodesh, Nippur, and Al-Kebulan, where the earthly genealogy of the Naturu Elohim lived, teaching and practicing the sciences of alchemy. So, my brothers and sisters, if you heard yourselves this morning, we are reawakening or reigniting this reality, whereby we teach and practice the sciences of alchemy. The only way we can do it is we have to shed this image of the beast, and we have to shed this mentality of the beast, and we have to change. When that happens, this society will view you as being dead to them. Find ways to keep you out of the conversation, or they'll find ways to keep you out of the mix, so to speak. That's okay. It's okay because we got our own mix. Amon?
Amon.
Amongst them there did rule in Salem, the capital of Mu, a female tribal leader, male tribal leader, Udum, who also held great interest in this replenishment that was taking place, as these events would determine the course of the future inhabitants of Taurus had been successfully bred out and eliminated after the second meteorite shower. So this reality of what's taking place is a gene was to be successfully bred out.
Genetics.
That didn't happen. Genetics, exactly, my brother, genetics. The importance of keeping, verse 63, scroll to Bereshit, African book of Genesis. The importance of keeping the male tribal rulers and priests, headed by one called Zakar, he with the best of memory, away from those of the Sauda, the outer fields, because they could systems, including Sabianism. which were dominating and adversely influencing the minds of many of those who lived before the second of the last two epochs, which occurred after the second meteorite shower. All of Africa and Asia, please highlight that. Please make sure you highlight that. Contained Akit Aten. My sister Hita Panepti, if you don't mind reading for us, please. Sorry if I got you off guard.
Where am I reading from? Sorry.
Right here on the screen, right after the highlight. Whose
Oh,
rules?
64. Let me just put this down.
Yes, verse 64.
Okay, thank you. Whose rules were such that in order to breed mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, and genetically purified children, the female tribal leaders and priestesses, headed by one called Nekeba, she who was the best of examples, and male tribal rulers and priests, headed by one called Zakar, he with the best of memory, who were going to reside there, were required to maintain celibacy, abstinence from marriage, or controlled natural sexual union for the sake of true morality, public well-being, and eugenics, genetic breeding.
This eugenics keeps popping up. This you mentioned to, and it has everything to do with where you go when you quote unquote die, when you transition. Continue, my sister, verse 65.
Verse 65, and for this new Adama was decreed by the female tribal leader, Mami, and tribal ruler, Udem, a new commandment, which allowed the female tribal leaders and priestesses, headed by one called Nekeba, and male tribal rulers and priests, headed by one called Zakar, to consume for food all which grew within the Akita 10 without cost nor worry.
So you in this garden, we in this garden, they say, listen, y'all can eat. You ain't got to worry about paying for nothing. Now we out there worrying about if Russia can cause the price of wheat to go up and the price of gas to go up. But we had it where we didn't even have to worry about those things. Let's continue, verse 66.
However, of the sacred banyan tree beneath which sat the records of eternity, written in tree script, along with the sacred text of Imhotep, inscribed with the sacred helix of rejuvenation, called the caduceus, whereby containing records of medicinal healing herbs that were to be used in cases of necessary surgeries or wound care. Should I go on?
Sorry, yes, I was just
67.
sorry, yes,
The
continue.
male tribal rulers and priests, headed by one called Zakar, were instructed that they should not consume of its fruit-like cat cola nut, nor touch it due to its hallucinogenic and addicting side effects, nor were they mentally developed enough to appreciate nor fully understand the writings which sat at its base, especially since consuming of it or misunderstanding the readings of its records would lead from that day forth to their predetermined, steady, physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental decay and eventual death.
Okay, so this death doesn't always come in one fell swoop. This death can be a steady decay that ultimately leads to a transition. And when this beast man of sin has influenced us, given us their narrative, given us their image, and given us their likeness, given us their scriptures, and given us their way of life, and we take of it, we don't do things the way that allow for us to ultimately sink and be at one with Naturu Elohim, or this thing that people call nature today. We begin the process of steadily, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and mentally decaying until eventually we transition into the fullness of that decay called death on this side of the transition. Are y'all with me?
Yes.
Right? So we want to be clear about what we're seeing in our world today, what we're seeing in our society, are doing the best we can do, living the life and parents, etc., etc. And even though we're doing that, we're watching as many around us die. Here we say transition. We know we've just come out of this global pandemic, or maybe we're still in it. I don't know. They're relaxing. Who knows? Right? They change the narrative every 2 seconds, right?
Okay, and that is that.
But we know that we've watched people transition because of this pandemic. And it wasn't only the pandemic. People are sick and people are steadily decaying. And that decay starts mentally, whereby we see people taking on these ideas of the beast man and the beast woman and starting to defend the craziness that we see taking place in the world today, and LGBT and blue hair and green hair, and I gotta have a tattoo everywhere on my body, and we're committed to decadence. Elder Johnny talked about his commitment to his way of life now, and he talked about his commitment to his way of life before that. Elder Shishang all talked about this commitment that we had. We may not have used that word, but we talked about the word frequent. And so if we are to die to ourselves, you cannot be at one with the Most High and continue to be yourself. That's said to us. Cannot be yourself and be at one with the Most High. Please write that down. Cannot be yourself and be one with the Most High Heavenly One. It's impossible. Because we have our own idea how things should be, and the Most High Heavenly One and Nere has a reality that we need to embrace. This is what the problem was in the heavens when that old serpent, that devil, that slanderer didn't understand that they had to actually merge and become one with the Most High. They was too busy focusing on who was in charge and who was supposed to be teaching, who was supposed to be leading the actual army at the time. And he's like, well, he can't lead me, he ain't from my genes. Not understanding that the Most High Heavenly One has placed a portion of itself in all of us, that we just embrace it. We can become one even with each other, all while being at one with the Most High Heavenly One and Nere. So in the Akit Aten, in this Ganawa, in this universe city, we as a people, because we fell out of line with the law, fell out of line with the commandments like we're doing today, we took of that fruit that we weren't supposed to take, or we read of that knowledge that we weren't supposed to read or digest, because we weren't mentally prepared for it. Just like today you watch television or you watch a movie and they'll say, well, PG-13, or they'll say TV-16, whatever the terminology they use, but they understand that children don't have a filter. They'll just take whatever is thrown at them without just being able to take the meat and spit out the bones. So they say, yeah, let's just give them a couple years before they watch this one. They won't appreciate the fact that it's just a movie, and that but what they're seeing is not real. It may influence them adversely. And so this is what began to happen to us. And it continues to happen to us. Now, as we go in the third scroll, the 57th verse of the Istanjil. The Istanjil is the book of Revelation from an African perspective. Now, Johnny, are you available? You able to read?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, I can read. Come.
Okay, beautiful. So we want to read verse 57 of the Istanjil. We're in the third scroll, for those who may have it. Ismail Rabbil Khaliku al Karim, and it reads, and Nere loves humanity more than you love yourselves. Thus your pain does not go unnoticed. And with this, Brother Johnny.
Final declaration. Atonism shall stress to all those members of humanity, most especially those of the Nubian Melanite family, concerning the invasion of the terrorizing Pale Arab Emirate religion of Mohammedanism, Islam, into the lands, minds, and hearts of countless members of humanity in the latter day, leading many astray from atonism, the true faith of peace.
Okay, just stick a pin there for a second, my brother, because you said something very powerful. It said, this is the final declaration. The final declaration. This final declaration is called what?
Final declaration, sorry, is atonism, sorry.
Atonism, yes. So this
Yes.
atonism is our last chance in this generation.
Right.
I want us to think about that. Because Basesh has been laying it out and explaining to us what this beast has planned, and not just only what they have planned, what they're doing. They already started injecting microchips in people, places like Sweden and other European countries. We're seeing how the global economy, we're basically held hostage. If something happens across the world, we all got to be affected by it. We accept
Yes.
that's the case. And if we're really, really paying attention, a lot of the stress and a lot of the pain and a lot of the heartache that we're going through, like it says here at the beginning of the verse, it says that Anku loves humanity more than you love yourself. Why does it say that? Because the Most High Heavenly One understands if you just put down their way of life and die to them, you will live and become one with your divinity.
That's right.
Your pain doesn't go unnoticed because there's a final declaration. They'll say that God so loved the world, he sent his only begotten son, John 3:16. This final declaration is more than just about a father sending his son. That goes against the protocols of nature, because in nature, the parents actually protect the youth because they know that they will live through the youth.
Right.
So we will sacrifice ourselves to make sure that our children live. So this final declaration of atonism or at-oneism, we see where many have sacrificed before us and have made the transition while sacrificing for us. Winnie Mandela, Baba Madiba, Nelson Mandela, Malcolm X, Yaz Santiwa, Harriet Tubman, Asaru, Aset, Neptune, all of these names that we talk about in the silsila, this unbroken genetic chain, they are part of ushering in what we know as atonism today. These BBs and Babas that we're going through with our session in the self-mastery classes are pieces of the puzzle. Isn't it amazing for those of you who had the opportunity to be in those classes, how everything is lining up for those who are paying attention?
That's right.
Oh, yes, yes.
This is not by chance. This is a final declaration. All of the pieces of the puzzle have to be put together, and we must leave this filthy world behind us. We must get to the point where we don't care how people see us. You don't care if you don't feel like I'm the person that you knew anymore, because I'm not.
Right.
I made a change. That change was atonism, this final declaration. Goes on, my brother, it says this, the pale Arab Emirate religion
Of Mohammedism, radical Islam shall do in their attempt to shut the door to eternal life, which atonism opens as a doorway to the primordial dot called Nagut. Through the knowledge of one's works and progeny as revealed through the divinely inspired scriptures, namely the original books of the Bible, which gives true guidance as to be prescribed, intentions, actions, and deeds, holding them all in equal importance. For in unity, there is much strength.
So these influencing doctrines or these influencing cultures and people, they're not trying to bring salvation. They're trying to shut the door. They're trying to make sure that you never gain access to that which will stop them or not allow them to rule you anymore. They want you to stay dead to your true religious identity and remain alive to them. But when you give them back their religion, their invading doctrines, then they become dead to you and I. And in that death, there's a beautiful reawakening. In that death, we embrace the final declaration of atonism. not death. We wake up to life. Come on. So this unity brings strength. It
The
says, "O
doorway
humanity, the what?"
of which we speak leads you to the point wherein you shall be able to communicate and interact with the higher guardian angelic hosts that are the Ethereal Neteru, controllers of the doorway of physical death, which none can escape, save those given the secret of Ak Nuak.
Ooh,